What if the most beautiful woman in the castle was also its deadliest predator? Imagine a noblewoman so obsessed with eternal youth that she bathed in the blood of virgins, her laughter echoing through stone halls as screams faded below. This is the chilling legend of Elizabeth Báthory, the Blood Countess accused of slaughtering over 600 young women in 16th century Hungary. If that sends shivers down your spine, hit that subscribe button and join us as we unravel the shocking truth behind one of history's most infamous figures. Share this story with friends who love dark history and let us know in the comments. Could you face the real Báthory? Elizabeth Báthory was born in 1560 into one of Hungary's wealthiest and most powerful families. Her lineage was a tapestry of prestige and peculiarity, woven with threads of madness. The Báthory clan ruled Transylvania, their name synonymous with power, but whispers of cruelty and occult practices clung to them like mist to a graveyard. Elizabeth's beauty was legendary porcelain skin, raven hair, and eyes that seemed to pierce souls. Yet beneath this radiant exterior lurked a mind that history would brand as monstrous. By age 15, she was married to Ferenc Nadasdy, a warlord known as the Black Hero of Hungary. Their union was a fortress of influence, but it was within the walls of their castles, particularly Čachtice, that Elizabeth's darkest impulses allegedly took root. Her reputation as the Blood Countess stems from accusations that she tortured and murdered hundreds of young women, believing their blood held the secret to eternal youth. Historical records, though murky, suggest a grim reality. In 1610, investigators stormed Čachtice Castle, claiming to find bodies drained of blood-hidden chambers and instruments of torture. Witnesses spoke of girls lured with promises of work, only to vanish into the castle's depths. The numbers are staggering. Some accounts claim 650 victims, though modern historians debate the figure, citing anywhere from 50 to 300. Regardless, the sheer scale of the accusations shocked Europe, painting Elizabeth as a Gothic horror incarnate. But was she truly a vampire-like killer, or a victim of political scheming? The Báthory family's wealth and influence made them targets in a turbulent era. King Matthias II, indebted to Elizabeth's late husband, faced pressure to curb the family's power. Some argue the accusations were exaggerated, a smear campaign to seize their lands. Yet the evidence, testimonies from servants' physical findings, and Elizabeth's own sealed letters paints a damning picture. Modern psychology offers another lens. Was Elizabeth a sadist driven by a warped psyche, or did her status as a woman in power amplify her legend into myth? Her obsession with youth wasn't unique in an era when nobility clung to beauty as a symbol of divine favor. Alchemists peddled elixirs, and mirrors were both treasures and tyrants. Elizabeth's alleged rituals, though, pushed this vanity to grotesque extremes. Picture her standing in a candlelit chamber, blood pooling at her feet, her reflection in a silver mirror distorted by flickering shadows. Did she see salvation or damnation in that crimson tide? The image is both horrifying and hypnotic, a testament to her enigma. This is just the beginning of Elizabeth Báthory's story, a tale of beauty, blood, and betrayal. What drove a noblewoman to such depravity, and how much of her legend is true? Stick with us to uncover the secrets of her chilling world. In the next part, we'll dive into the twisted rituals that made her infamous. Can you handle the truth? The Castle of Whispers. What secrets festered in the shadowed halls of Čachtice Castle, where screams were swallowed by stone? Elizabeth Báthory's name chills the blood, but it was her fortress, a labyrinth of luxury and horror, that became the stage for her alleged atrocities. If you're gripped by this tale of darkness, hit that like button and share it with friends who crave history's grim truths. Let us know in the comments, what would you do if you stumbled into Báthory's castle? Stay with us as we peel back the layers of her twisted world. By 1585, Elizabeth Báthory was no longer just a noblewoman. She was the mistress of Čachtice, a sprawling castle perched like a vulture over the Hungarian countryside. Its towers loomed over villages, a symbol of the Báthory family's iron grip on power. To the peasants below, it was a place of awe and dread, where feasts glittered with gold, but rumors of missing girls spread like wildfire. Elizabeth, now in her mid-20s, ruled the castle while her husband Ferenc Nadasti waged wars afar. Her beauty still turned heads, but her demeanor had shifted colder, more commanding, with a gaze that seemed to weigh souls. Servants whispered of her temper of nights when her laughter mingled with cries from the cellars. Čachtice was more than a home. It was a fortress of secrets. Its walls hid chambers accessible only through concealed doors, and its dungeons were said to be stained with more than dampness. Historical accounts pieced together from 1610 testimonies describe a chilling routine. Young girls, often daughters of peasants or low-born servants, were lured to the castle with promises of employment as maids. Some were as young as 12, drawn by the chance to serve a noblewoman whose beauty was the stuff of legend. But once inside, many vanished. Villagers noticed the pattern girls entered Čachtice, but few returned. Those who did spoke in hushed tones of the countess's moods and strange rituals. What drove Elizabeth to such extremes? Modern psychologists might point to a personality disorder, perhaps narcissistic or sadistic, tendencies amplified by her unchecked power. In an era when nobles held life-and-death authority over their subjects, Elizabeth's wealth and status made her untouchable. Her husband's absence left her free to indulge her whims, and her inner circle trusted servants, like Anna Darvulia and Dorothea Sentes, allegedly enabled her darkest desires. These women, later named as accomplices, were said to procure victims, ensuring a steady stream of girls for Elizabeth's so-called beauty rituals. The most shocking accounts describe Elizabeth's obsession with blood as a fountain of youth. Servants testified to seeing her oversee gruesome procedures, girls tied to racks, their veins opened with blades, their blood collected in vats. Some claimed she drank it, others that she bathed in it, believing it would preserve her flawless skin. These stories, though sensational, align with the era's fascination with alchemy and the occult. Blood was seen as a life force, and Elizabeth, surrounded by alchemists and mystics, may have bought into their promises. Imagine her in a candle-lit chamber, her silk gown stained crimson, her face a mask of determination as she sought to defy time itself. The image is grotesque, yet it captures the desperation of a woman clinging to power in a world that valued youth above all. But how much of this is true? Some historians argue the tales were exaggerated by rivals eager to dismantle the Báthory dynasty. The family's wealth, vast estates, gold, and influence made them a threat to Hungary's king, who owed them debts he couldn't repay. Yet the physical evidence found in 1610, bodies, tools of torture, and blood-soaked rooms, lends weight to the accusations. Even if the victim count was inflated, the suffering was real. The girls, often nameless in history, were daughters, sisters, dreams snuffed out in the name of vanity or cruelty. Čachtice Castle wasn't just a backdrop. It was a character in Elizabeth's story, amplifying her legend. Its isolation allowed her to operate in secrecy, its grandeur a mask for the horrors within. What rituals unfolded in its depths, and who else knew the truth? In the next part, we'll explore the enigmatic figures who enabled Elizabeth's reign of terror, her loyal confidants, and their own dark motives. Can you stomach the secrets they kept, the coven of cruelty? Who were the shadows that stood by Elizabeth Báthory, enabling her descent into darkness? The Blood Countess didn't act alone. Her gruesome legacy was built on the loyalty of a sinister inner circle, women who became her hands, her eyes, and her instruments of terror. If this tale of twisted allegiance sends chills down your spine, smash that subscribe button and share this video with friends who love uncovering history's darkest secrets. Drop a comment. Would you dare cross paths with Báthory's accomplices? Let's dive deeper into the horror. By the 1590s, Elizabeth Báthory was in her 30s, her beauty still a weapon, but her reputation was beginning to fray. Čachtice Castle, her fortress of fear, hummed with whispers of missing girls and strange rituals. Yet Elizabeth's power wasn't hers alone. It was amplified by a cadre of loyal servants who, according to 1610 trial testimonies, were as complicit as their mistress. Chief among them were Anna Darvulia, Dorothea Sentes, Ilona Jo, and a young hunchback named Fichko. These figures, drawn from the margins of society, formed a chilling coven that enabled Elizabeth's alleged atrocities. Their motives, loyalty, fear, or something darker, remain one of history's most haunting puzzles. Anna Darvulia, a mysterious woman with a rumored knowledge of witchcraft, was Elizabeth's closest confidant. Described as cunning and secretive, Anna allegedly taught the Countess occult practices, feeding her obsession with blood as a source of youth. Picture a dimly lit chamber, Anna whispering incantations as Elizabeth watched entranced while blood dripped from a suspended victim. Trial records claim Anna orchestrated the luring of girls using her influence in nearby villages to promise work at the castle. Her role was pivotal. Some historians suggest she was the architect of Báthory's rituals, a puppeteer pulling strings from the shadows. Dorothea Sentes, known as Dorko, was the muscle. A robust, intimidating woman, she was accused of physically restraining victims and wielding the tools of torture. Witnesses described her dragging girls to the dungeons, her face impassive as screams echoed. Ilona Jo, older and stern, managed the household, but allegedly turned a blind eye to the horrors, even assisting in disposing of bodies. Fichko, the young male servant, was an oddity, a deformed boy whose loyalty to Elizabeth was unwavering. He was said to fetch victims and clean up the grisly aftermath, his small frame slipping unnoticed through the castle's passages. Why did these people enable such horror? Modern psychology offers clues. Some may have been bound by fear, others by the promise of power or wealth. In 16th century Hungary, serving a noblewoman like Báthory was a path to security, even if it meant wading through blood. The era's social hierarchy placed Elizabeth above reproach her servants, many of whom were illiterate and impoverished, had little choice but to obey. Yet their active participation suggests a darker truth. Were they seduced by her charisma, or did they share her cruelty? The trial testimonies paint a picture of complicity, with servants describing how they lured girls, held them down, or scrubbed blood from stone floors. The victims, often young, poor, and nameless, suffered most. Imagine a peasant girl, eyes wide with hope, entering Čachtice for a promised job, only to face Darvulia's cold smile or Dorko's iron grip. Their stories, buried in history, evoke a gut-wrenching empathy. The coven's efficiency ensured the castle's secrets stayed hidden for years, but cracks were forming. Villagers grew suspicious, and whispers reached the ears of the powerful. Was this group a loyal shield for their mistress, or were they pawns in a larger game? This coven of cruelty was the backbone of Báthory's terror, but their story raises questions. Were they as guilty as she, or were they trapped by her power? In the next part, we'll uncover the rituals that defined Elizabeth's obsession, acts so shocking they birthed a vampire legend. Can you handle the gruesome details, the crimson rituals? What horrors unfolded in the flickering candlelight of Čachtice Castle, where blood was said to flow like wine? Elizabeth Báthory's name is synonymous with depravity, but it's the chilling details of her alleged rituals that haunt history's pages. If this tale of gore and obsession grips you, hit that subscribe button and share this video with friends who crave the darkest corners of history. Drop a comment. Could you stomach witnessing Báthory's rituals? Let's plunge into the heart of her bloody legend. By the early 1600s, Elizabeth Báthory, now in her 40s, was a widow ruling Čachtice Castle with an iron will. Her beauty, though fading, still captivated, but her obsession with preserving it had grown into a grotesque fixation. Trial records from 1610, though tainted by bias, paint a vivid picture of rituals so horrific they seem ripped from a Gothic nightmare. Servants testified that Elizabeth, guided by her confidant Anna d'Arvulia, believed the blood of young virgins held the key to eternal youth. These rituals weren't mere acts of violence. They were meticulous, almost ceremonial, blending vanity with a chilling blend of cruelty and superstition. Picture a hidden chamber deep within Čachtice, its stone walls damp and cold, lit only by a circle of candles. A young girl, perhaps 15, is bound to a wooden frame, her eyes wide with terror. Elizabeth, dressed in a flowing gown, stands before a silver mirror, her face a mask of eerie calm. According to witnesses, her servants, Dorothea Sentes or Fichko, would slice the girl's veins with precise cuts, collecting the blood in ornate basins. Some accounts claim Elizabeth bathed in it, her skin glistening crimson as she murmured prayers or incantations. Others say she drank small amounts, believing it would infuse her with vitality. The scene is both grotesque and mesmerizing, a twisted alchemy of beauty and death. Historical records are murky, but the tools found in 1610, knives, hooks, and iron cages, support the grim testimonies. One particularly horrifying device described by a servant was a spiked cage suspended from the ceiling, designed to pierce victims and collect their blood as they writhed. Elizabeth allegedly stood beneath it, letting the warm droplets fall onto her skin. Modern historians debate the extent of these acts, noting that such stories align with the era's fascination with blood as a life force. Alchemists of the time peddled elixirs promising youth, and Elizabeth, surrounded by occult influences, may have seen blood as the ultimate potion. But the rituals weren't just about vanity. They were a display of power. In 16th century Hungary, a noblewoman like Elizabeth held absolute authority over her subjects. The girls, often peasants or orphans, were disposable in her eyes, their lives a small price for her immortality. Modern psychology suggests a sadistic streak, perhaps fueled by a narcissistic need for control. Each act of violence reinforced her dominance, her castle a stage where she played goddess and executioner. The victim's screams, muffled by stone, were a testament to her untouchable status. Yet cracks were forming. By 1609, the disappearances of girls once ignored as the fate of the poor began to draw attention. Elizabeth's rituals reportedly grew reckless, targeting daughters of minor nobles, a fatal misstep. Rumors spread beyond the villages, reaching the ears of the Hungarian court. Was her obsession spiraling out of control, or were her enemies circling ready to exploit her infamy? These rituals birthed the vampire myths that still cling to Báthory's name, but they also sealed her fate. What pushed her to such extremes, and who dared to challenge her? In the next part, we'll explore the unraveling of her empire as the world closed in. Are you ready for the reckoning, the crumbling empire? When does a whisper of suspicion become a roar that topples an empire? By 1609, Elizabeth Báthory's Čachtice Castle was no longer just a fortress of power. It was a house of horrors teetering on the edge of exposure. The Blood Countess had ruled with impunity, but the blood of her victims was staining the cracks in her carefully crafted world. If this tale of betrayal and downfall hooks you, smash that like button and subscribe to dive deeper into history's darkest corners. Share this with friends who love a chilling true story and comment below. Could you stand up to a figure as powerful as Báthory? Let's uncover the moment her empire began to crumble. Elizabeth, now in her late 40s, was still a striking figure, her beauty defying time, or so she believed. Her rituals, fueled by blood and superstition, had grown bolder, perhaps reckless. For years, the disappearances of peasant girls had been ignored, their lives too insignificant to challenge a noblewoman's authority in 16th century Hungary. But Elizabeth's fatal mistake was crossing a line. She began targeting daughters of minor nobility. These were not nameless peasants, but girls with families who had connections, voices that could reach the royal court. A single missing noblewoman's daughter was enough to ignite whispers that even Čachtice's walls couldn't contain. By 1609, rumors of Elizabeth's atrocities had spread beyond the villages. Local clergy, horrified by tales of blood-soaked rituals, began preaching against the she-devil of Čachtice. Parents refused to send their daughters to the castle, even for promised wages. The Hungarian court, led by King Matthias II, was under pressure. The Báthory family's wealth and influence had long been a thorn in the crown's side. Elizabeth's late husband, Ferenc Nadasdy, had lent the king vast sums debts Matthias couldn't repay. Seizing the opportunity, the king's advisors, particularly Palatine Gheorghe Thurzo, saw Elizabeth's scandal as a chance to dismantle her power. Thurzo, a cunning politician, began gathering evidence. Servants coerced or tortured, spilled chilling details, hidden dungeons, blood-stained floors, and Elizabeth's eerie calm as she oversaw her rituals. Modern historians debate how much was truth versus exaggeration. Thurzo had motive to inflate the charges, as convicting Elizabeth could erase the crown's debts and seize Báthory lands. Yet the physical evidence was hard to dismiss. In late 1610, Thurzo's men raided Čachtice, claiming to find bodies in various stages of decay, some drained of blood, others hastily buried. The sheer volume of testimony, over 300 witnesses from servants to villagers, painted a damning picture. Imagine the scene: torchlight flickering across Čachtice's courtyard as armed men stormed the castle. Elizabeth Regal, even in defiance, faced accusations that would shock Europe. Her servants, once loyal, turned against her under threat of torture. The emotional weight of the victims' stories began to surface. Girls who dreamed of a better life, only to meet a gruesome end. Their families, powerless against a noblewoman, now had a voice through Thurzo's investigation. The contrast is stark. Elizabeth's aristocratic poise against the raw grief of those she'd wronged. But was she a monster or a scapegoat? Modern analysis suggests a mix of truth and political maneuvering. Elizabeth's gender made her vulnerable. Powerful women were often demonized in a male-dominated era. Yet the sheer scale of the accusations, backed by physical evidence, suggests she wasn't innocent. Her empire was crumbling, and the noose was tightening. What would happen when the Blood Countess faced justice? In the next part, we'll dive into the trial that sealed her fate, a spectacle of horror and betrayal. Can you handle the verdict? The trial of the Blood Countess. What happens when a noblewoman's power clashes with the weight of justice? In 1610, Elizabeth Báthory faced a trial that would echo through history, branding her as the Blood Countess for centuries. The accusations were horrific: hundreds of murders, blood rituals, and a castle soaked in terror. But was the truth as crimson as the tales? If this saga of betrayal and judgment grips you, hit that subscribe button and share this video with friends who love history's darkest mysteries. Drop a comment. Do you think Báthory was guilty or framed? Let's step into the courtroom where her fate was sealed. By December 1610, Čachtice Castle had been raided by Palatine Gheorghe Thurzo's men, and Elizabeth Báthory, now 50, was under house arrest. The trial, held in 1611, was less a quest for truth than a public reckoning. Hungary's legal system, steeped in feudal hierarchy, rarely prosecuted nobles, making Elizabeth's case a spectacle. Thurzo, tasked by King Matthias II, orchestrated the proceedings with a clear goal to dismantle the Báthory dynasty's power. The trial wasn't held in a grand courtroom, but in a series of grim hearings across castles, with Elizabeth herself never formally testifying, a privilege of her noble status. The evidence was damning. Over 300 witnesses, from terrified servants to grieving families, recounted tales of horror. Servants like Dorothea Sentes and Fichko, under threat of torture, described Elizabeth's rituals. girls drained of blood, tortured with needles, or burned with hot irons. Physical evidence, blood-stained tools, hidden chambers, and shallow graves seem to confirm the worst. One witness claimed to have seen a ledger in Elizabeth's handwriting, listing over 600 victims, though modern historians question its existence, citing possible exaggeration to vilify her. The emotional toll was palpable. Mothers wept as they spoke of daughters lured to Čachtice, their hopes crushed by a noblewoman's cruelty. Yet the trial had cracks. Elizabeth's wealth and influence made her a target. King Matthias owed her family vast debts, and Thurzo stood to gain by seizing Báthory lands. Some argue the accusations were inflated, blending truth with political opportunism. Elizabeth's gender played a role. Powerful women in the 16th century were often demonized as witches or monsters. Modern scholars note the lack of direct evidence against her. She never confessed, and the ledger was never produced. Still, the sheer volume of testimony combined with bodies found at Čachtice made her defense nearly impossible. Imagine the scene: a cold hall filled with grim-faced nobles, Elizabeth's servants trembling as they betrayed their mistress. Elizabeth herself, confined to her castle, remained defiant, her noble blood shielding her from torture or execution. Her accomplices weren't so lucky. Dorothea Ilona Jo and others were tried, swiftly convicted of murder and witchcraft. Their punishments were brutal fingers, torn off bodies burned alive, while Elizabeth's status spared her such a fate. The contrast is stark: a noblewoman untouchable, her servants bearing the full weight of justice. The trial didn't just condemn Elizabeth, it birthed a legend. Her story amplified by sensational pamphlets spread across Europe, painting her as a vampire-like monster. But was she a sadistic killer or a pawn in a political game? The truth likely lies in the gray cruelty mixed with exaggeration. What punishment awaited the Countess, and how would it shape her legacy? In the next part, we'll explore her final days, locked away in a fate as chilling as her crimes. Can you face the end of her story? The living tomb. What does it feel like to be walled away from the world? Your name cursed as a monster's, Elizabeth Báthory. The Blood Countess didn't face the executioner's blade, but her punishment was a fate as chilling as her alleged crimes, a living death sealed in stone. If this haunting tale of isolation and infamy keeps you on edge, hit that subscribe button and share this video with friends who love history's darkest secrets. Drop a comment. Could you endure Báthory's fate? Let's step into the shadows of her final days. In January 1611, the trial of Elizabeth Báthory concluded, but her noble blood spared her the gruesome executions meted out to her accomplices. Dorothea Ilona Jo and others were burned alive or mutilated, their deaths a public spectacle to appease a horrified populace. Elizabeth, however, was too powerful to kill outright. King Matthias II and Palatine Georgi Thurzo, wary of angering her influential family, chose a punishment both cruel and symbolic. She was to be immured, walled up alive, in her own castle. Čachtice, once her fortress of terror, became her prison. Imagine the scene: Elizabeth, now 50. Her beauty faded, but her defiance intact, led to a small suite of rooms in Čachtice's tower. Masons sealed the doors with bricks, leaving only a narrow slit for food and air. The woman who once commanded vast estates was reduced to a ghost in her own home, her world shrunk to cold stone walls. Historical accounts describe her confinement as absolute: no visitors, no contact beyond a servant passing meager rations. The silence must have been deafening, broken only by her own thoughts, perhaps haunted by the screams of her victims, or the betrayal of her servants. What did she feel in those final years? Modern psychology might suggest a narcissist like Elizabeth struggled with the loss of power and admiration. Her obsession with youth and beauty, once fed by blood, now faced the relentless mirror of time. Some accounts claim she wrote letters pleading her innocence or cursing her enemies, but these were never sent. Others say she sank into madness, her mind unraveling in the suffocating dark. The villagers below, once terrified of her, now whispered of a cursed countess, her name synonymous with horror. Her confinement lasted 3 years, from 1611 to 1614. On August 24, 1614, a servant found her dead, her body slumped against the wall. She was 54. The cause, perhaps starvation, illness, or a broken spirit, remains unclear. Her death was quiet, a stark contrast to the chaos she'd sown. No grand funeral followed. Her body was reportedly buried in secret, some say, at Čachtice, others in a nearby church to avoid desecration by an angry mob. The Báthory family, eager to distance themselves, let her name fade into infamy. But her story didn't end with her death. The trial's sensational accounts spread across Europe, printed in pamphlets that painted her as a vampire-like fiend. These tales, blending fact and fiction, shaped her legend, inspiring Gothic horror and vampire myths for centuries. Was her punishment justice for countless victims, or a cruel act against a woman targeted for her power? The truth lies buried with her in a tomb of stone and silence. What legacy did the Blood Countess leave behind? And how did her story twist into myth? In the next part, we'll explore the cultural impact of Báthory's infamy and the enduring fascination with her horrors. Can you handle the echoes of her name? The vampire's shadow. How does a noblewoman's name become synonymous with eternal horror? Elizabeth Báthory's death in 1614 didn't silence her story. It birthed a legend that haunts us, still weaving her into the fabric of vampire myths and Gothic nightmares. The Blood Countess lives on her tale, a chilling blend of truth and terror that captivates the world. If this saga of infamy and myth grips you, smash that subscribe button and share this video with friends who love history's darkest tales. Drop a comment. Does Báthory's legend still send shivers down your spine? Let's unravel the echoes of her name. When Elizabeth Báthory was walled up in Čachtice Castle, her story could have faded into obscurity, another footnote in Hungary's turbulent history. Instead, it exploded. By the early 17th century, sensational pamphlets spread across Europe, detailing her alleged bloodbaths and gruesome rituals. These accounts, often embellished, painted her as a monstrous figure, part noblewoman, part demon, who bathed in virgin's blood to defy death. In an era obsessed with witchcraft and the supernatural, her story struck a chord, transforming her into a real-life villain whose horrors outshone fiction. Imagine the scene in a 17th-century tavern, travelers huddled around a fire, whispering of the Hungarian countess who drank blood to stay young. These tales, printed in crude woodcuts, reached as far as England and France, blending with local folklore about vampires, creatures who fed on blood to cheat mortality. Báthory's rituals, whether true or exaggerated, fit perfectly into this mold. Her story, with its mix of beauty, cruelty, and blood, became a cornerstone of vampire mythology, predating Dracula by centuries. Modern scholars note that her legend likely influenced Bram Stoker's 1897 novel, as Eastern European tales of blood-drinking nobles shaped his iconic vampire. But why does her story endure? Part of it is the sheer horror, a woman of power defying societal norms, indulging in unthinkable acts. In the 16th century, women were rarely seen as capable of such cruelty, making Báthory a perverse fascination. Her gender amplified her infamy, casting her as a dark mirror to ideals of femininity. Modern pop culture has kept her alive, from horror films like Countess Dracula, 1971, to novels and video games. She's a symbol of beauty, twisted into terror. Even today, true crime podcasts dissect her case, blending historical fact with Gothic allure. The emotional pull is undeniable. The victims, hundreds of girls their names lost to history, evoke a haunting sympathy. Their stories buried beneath Báthory's legend remind us of the human cost of unchecked power. Yet there's a morbid curiosity about Elizabeth herself. Was she a sadistic killer, a victim of political scheming, or both? Modern psychology suggests a complex figure, perhaps a narcissist driven by vanity, perhaps a scapegoat for a kingdom eager to crush a powerful woman. Her legacy is a paradox, a monster to some, a mystery to others. Her influence extends beyond horror. Báthory's story raises questions about power, gender, and the stories we tell. In Hungary, she's a grim national legend, her name whispered with unease. Globally, she's a cultural icon, proof that truth can be stranger and bloodier than fiction. What final secrets does her story hold, and what does it reveal about humanity's darkest impulses? In the final part, we'll confront the lasting impact of the Blood Countess and the chilling lessons of her life. Are you ready for the end? The eternal curse of the Blood Countess. What does it mean to leave a legacy soaked in blood, feared yet unforgettable? Elizabeth Báthory's name is no mere footnote in history. It's a scream that echoes through time, a warning of what happens when power, vanity, and cruelty collide. The Blood Countess died alone in her stone prison, but her story lives on a haunting reminder of humanity's darkest corners. If this chilling journey has gripped you, smash that subscribe button like this video and share it with friends who crave history's most shocking tales. Drop a comment. Does Báthory's story terrify you, or do you see her as a misunderstood figure? Let's close the book on her blood-soaked legacy. Elizabeth Báthory's death in 1614 marked the end of her physical reign, but it was only the beginning of her mythic one. Walled up in Čachtice Castle, she left behind a trail of horror, hundreds of girls. Their lives snuffed out, their names erased by time. The trial of 1611 with its 300 witnesses and gruesome evidence cemented her as history's deadliest noblewoman. Yet one final detail, often overlooked, adds a chilling twist. A hidden journal discovered years later in Čachtice's ruins reportedly contained cryptic notes in Elizabeth's hand, phrases like, "Blood is life and youth eternal." Though its authenticity is debated, modern historians note its existence in 18th century records, a ghostly echo of her obsession. Imagine her alone in her cell, scratching those words by candlelight, her mind consumed by a dream of immortality. Her legacy is a paradox. To some, she's a monster, a serial killer whose sadistic rituals, whether 50 or 600 victims, shock the conscience. The emotional weight of her victims' stories lingers, young girls lured by promises met with unimaginable pain. Their faceless suffering fuels the horror, a reminder of the cost of absolute power. Modern psychology paints Elizabeth as a narcissist, perhaps unhinged by privilege, her cruelty, a twisted bid to defy mortality. Yet others see her as a victim of her era, a powerful woman scapegoated by a king, desperate to erase his debts. The truth, as always, lies in the shadows. She was likely both predator and pawn, her crimes real, but magnified by political intrigue. Báthory's story shaped more than history. It birthed a cultural phenomenon. Her blood-soaked rituals inspired vampire myths, feeding into tales like Dracula and fueling Gothic horror. Today, she's a fixture in pop culture, from films to podcasts, her name a shorthand for beauty turned monstrous. In Hungary, she's a grim legend, a cautionary tale of unchecked power. Globally, she fascinates, proof that truth can be stranger than fiction. Her story challenges us. How do we judge those who wield absolute power? What drives someone to such depravity? And why are we drawn to her darkness? The Blood Countess teaches us that power untamed leads to ruin. Her life, glittering cruel and tragic, holds a mirror to humanity's obsession with youth control and legacy. As we close this tale, one question lingers. If you stood in Čachtice's ruins, Hearing whispers of her crimes, would you fear her ghost? This is the end of Elizabeth Báthory's story, but her curse endures. Subscribe to Weird History Unveiled for more shocking true stories. Like and share to spread her chilling tale, and comment below. What's the most haunting part of Báthory's legacy? Let's keep history's secrets alive.